The Nasuverse has many different interesting messages and perspectives, and it all gets wrapped up in a bow that is easy to consume. A work that is recognized as being one of the best in the Fate series is Fate Zero, which definitely takes a quite dark turn around the halfway point in the plot. Yet, it could be seen in the underlaying of how the characters both act in their interactions with each other and others, their motivations and ultimate fates. Yet, even in the darkest hours of the show, the forces of evil are being defeated by their own actions. First of all, there is definitely the existence of objective morality within the Nasuverse itself. It is pretty explicitly pronounced within the Fate franchise as well. Good people and actions will be ultimately rewarded in the end, and the evil will not be the dominant force in the universe forever. Plus, people never get away with their misdeeds that they commit. There's always something that comes up. Not Karitsugu, not Kyrie, or Sola. Also, justice does not come to mean revenge, but rather it is rightfully restoring what was destroyed and putting it in the proper place, and that it cannot be done by exerting one's will upon the circumstances they find themselves in. Get out of here, nihilism. None of my homies like nihilism. Yeah, I said it. Fate Zero, despite being written by Killer Gen Urobuchi, isn't in the slightest nihilistic, more of a Greek tragedy than anything else. The fatal flaw in all of the protagonists is, in the end, all revolves around the concept of pride, and who lives and dies is dictated not by their actions alone, but often by the assumption that they are so powerful that they are above anything that could really harm them, or what they are doing could be considered evil. Really, the only nihilistic character in the series is Kyrie, who comes to the realization that nothing in life really matters except gaining and amassing power in the end. No matter how you slice it, he gets iced in the end, and even if it is 10 years later on. Also a interesting tidbit is that it's Kyrie, which in the Greek is Christ. And so whenever you hear Kyrie, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, it's definitely referring that religious element in Christianity, more specifically Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Now that this is out of the way, to begin with the plot of Fate Zero, it revolves around the Holy Grail War, a conflict where 7 mages go and summon servants called heroic spirits and duke it out in a town in Japan called Fuyuki City. The Grail has the power to grant one wish to the winner of the war. This is also conducted by a cabal of various secret organizations in order to keep their own world's existence, a secret from the mundane world. Also, not all of the masters are the ones which were intended, since in this battle royale is one where it simply requires the summoning of a servant via an artifact and also a ritual. As long as you have the aptitude in magecraft and the right somatic components, then it is possible for anyone to join in with both of these things. Also, all of the servants in some way, shape, or form are tragic heroes or figures from history or mythology, and please take a pin in this because it will be very, very relevant later. The first bump in the road comes with the Grail War having 2 unplanned masters participating. The first one we see that gets in the way of the elaborate scheme of things is Waver Velvet. Waver is a mage studying at the Tower of London who comes from a very new family of mages who are consequently very weak and probably are at others' beck and call, and until their own bloodline has grown over hundreds of years. It should also be noted that a mage's power comes via their crests, which acts as a reserve of mana. Mana is essentially life force, and the more people you kill or drain mana from, the more power you gain, and family seals can only be given to one person, meaning there is an encouragement for mages to have a single child or to only adopt one. Velvet intercepts the summoning artifact intended for Kenneth in El Molloy in the mailroom. This is our first indication that the plans of the powers that be are not as infallible and airtight would have believed. There is room for interference, and this will be a source of both frustration and importance to the plot later on. The second is Ryunosuke Aru, who is a serial killer with the combination of murder of uncounted victims, some latent magus talent, and participation in a summoning results in him making contact with Giri Rays. The resulting pair is in essence a tag team of terror, who are not responsible or reliable to anyone but their own interests. These are the catalysts which forces everyone else to go and suspend the Grail War later on, and also be the uncontrolled or accountable variable in all of this, since both of them are not concerned with any semblance of the greater picture when it comes to the overall Grail War. They are more happy just being totally evil and amassing enough power that it could cause the entire world to go kaput. Not to mention that the mundane governments do get involved with the whole scrambling the jets, and probably narrowly avoided getting the entire mundane world governments involved around the halfway point. The other masters are all from established bloodlines within the Magus world in some way, shape, or form. They are the establishment who have been sponsored to participate in the Holy Grail War itself. Everyone has an agenda on this side in participating in the war, and no one really has a good reason for doing so in the end. The goal is to win, gain the power of the Grail, and to protect the existence of the Masquerade from the mundane world, lest it become common knowledge and the entirety of that world be compromised and everything goes to pot. It is an uneasy thing with the other fact that two of the factions have made an alliance in order to screw over the other participants, relies on the trust in each other, and also that no other machinations are being put forth on any other ends. Or at the very least, that these machinations do not directly interfere or contradict with what they are planning on doing. This is the nature of the alliance between the church and the Tosaka family, whose basic goal is to go and play all sides, have everybody else kill each other off, then kill the survivors, and then swoop in to harness the Grail for their own purposes. The Tosaka's goal is to reach the root, which is the origin and source of all magic in reality, and after that, it's really not specified. And if we're using Aristotelian terms, it looks that it's the full actuality of the essence of God, if that makes any sense to anybody else who's watching or reading this. The church, on the other hand, simply wants to keep their seat and power in the magical world, if not gain control through it. Their motivations are never fully explained, and yet that's a good thing as well, because we don't need to know every little bit and bob that is going on. Things also look to be going well for them due to the fact that the church is supposedly the neutral arbiter to ensure things do not get out of hand, and the Masquerade is propped up firmly, and I guess to also protect the general public from the wanton destruction. In theory, Kyrie Kodamine, a recent widower, is sent to Japan with the cover of being Tosaka's apprentice, but instead is the master of assassin, and in essence acts as a sacrificial lamb for the larger picture while being quite harmless. He knows at this point that the game is rigged, and that no matter what, barring some very extraordinary circumstances, the church and Tosaka will win in the long game in the end. The game was rigged from the very start, as it were. He only breaks from this mentality after having a heart-to-heart with probably the most amoral character in the entire show, Gilgamesh. This leads him to go and take the reins of the original plans after murdering both his father and Tosaka. Kiritsugu's plan and goal is to achieve world peace and to be a hero of justice no matter what. And this could not go wrong at all, guys. This absolutist mentality is what allows him to go and commit atrocities in the name of the greater good. His ultimate goal is to establish a better world and a better place for everyone, even if it means leaving a pile of corpses stacked up everywhere he goes. During one of the first battles between him and Kaneth, he blows up an entire high-end hotel as an attempt to kill Kenneth or at least lure him out. However, he does make sure to evacuate the building in order to ensure that no one is killed as a result of his actions. And at the same time, his actions will already cause people to possibly lose their entire livelihoods and anything that they might have left in the hotel itself. It could range from mementos to life-saving medication to a presentation that could propose an effective way to solve world hunger. All of those potential things might have gone up in smoke. Is this a practical example of whataboutism? No, not really, because we're not talking about just his actions, but his consequences of these actions, which result in this atrocity being committed, or at least potential atrocities. We even know later on that his actions do cause widespread destruction. Yes, he has a daughter, Ilya, who he has left behind in order to keep her safe, and he also loves Iris, even if she cannot comprehend the same level of emotions and understanding due to being a homunculus and having the mind of a literal child. He implies Maya as a tool whom he uses in order to accomplish his needs and to carry out also an affair in order to not feel too attached when he has to murder Iris in order to gain the Grail and to get his wish granted. Kenneth is a stereotypical English aristocrat who is arrogant beyond belief. He wants to win and assumes that he can easily win because the Grail War just by acting in the way he always has, and being better than his peers by the sheer virtue of his prestige. Unfortunately, the cracks begin to show not really when Waver takes his first pick, but when his fiancée takes a fancy to Diarmuid and cripples him, forces him to hand over his command seals, and becomes Bedlam. He also gets murdered due to a loophole in the Gios he makes with Kiritsugu, and instead gets murdered by Maya, but that's a little further down the line. Finally, we turn to Kariya Matau, whose goal is to rescue his niece Sakura from the Matau clan, because otherwise she is going to be used as a means to an end as a vessel by her family. So he makes the deal with the head of the clan to take her place, and if he wins, then Sakura will be freed and everything that she experienced will be wiped away. In order to accomplish this, Kariya ingests parasitic worms, which gives him a much needed boost in his abilities, and at the same time it saps him of his life and reduces it to about a month after the Grail War ends. In addition, he is also under the strain of being the master of Berserker, who is simply an uncontrollable force of nature with one thing on its mind: revenge. He is the only insider who is not consulted or really known about to the other masters who are official participants. Now, the servants have, for the most part, the same type of blindness which ultimately led to their downfall, yet they are not all aware that they will have to be sacrificed in order to achieve their goals. There are 4 servants who are not really in this category, that being Iskander, Lancelot, Guy, and Assassin, all for their various reasons. To go with the shortest of these characters first, it is Assassin, a composite of several assassins belonging to Hassan-i Sabah, aka the Old Man of the Mountain, or more well known as the founder of the Assassins in Assassin's Creed. He is used as a total pawn and executes the will of his master Kyrie without any hesitation. There was never an ulterior motive except to accomplish his master's ends, which makes sense due to his main goal in life, and the order he established was to enforce his master's will and to turn back the Crusaders in the area. In the end, his own order only lasted a little over 200 years until being completely wiped out by the Mongols. Guy de Rais simply wants one thing, and that is to revive Jeanne d'Arc after she got executed. How he goes about it is to go on a murder spree to the point where he summons a kaiju from the Cthulhu mythos essentially. His motivations are just so raw and uncomplicated that, like his abilities with his magic tome, he becomes a nearly unstoppable force in the end. He does not care about anything concerning the Grail War. All Guy wants is to get John back no matter the cost. Iskander is simply a jobber in the end. He ducks out of most of the actions in the Grail War, with the exception being the meeting of the three kings and stopping Castor from causing the apocalypse. Despite being the man who conquered most of the known world in record time and has a knack for being a beast in combat, basically lays back and lets everyone else duke it out. He serves as more of a friend and a partner to Waver instead of being in a subservient role. Enough heart to match his incredible brawn. Ultimately, he lacks the strength to face up against Gilgamesh. He knows that he is going to lose in the end and takes it with grace. Maybe he was wanting to win, or if Gilgamesh had not been pulling the strings in the second act, there might have been a chance. At the same time, what we see of him shows that he is more concerned about messing around and just living life than participating in the Grail War, an active acknowledgement of his humility being fairly realistic and humble. Lancelot has no other goal than to get revenge on Arturia, nothing more, nothing less. He uses any and all methods to track down and kill her. The anguish and pain caused by his perceived betrayal by her, and it simply fuels his every waking moment, like clutching a thorn and refusing to let go. Now, the big three, which most of the series revolves around, Diarmuid, Arturia, and Gilgamesh. These are the three who try to assert their wills, and is ultimately where we see that all tragedy boils down, not to a specific scheme, but simply being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that no matter who you are and what you do, there will be some sort of thing that screws you over in the end. They all have a conviction that they are correct and right in the totality of their beliefs. Diarmuid, while he actively dislikes Cannith and would rather not be in his employ, does what he is ordered to do no matter his own personal convictions. He also decides to follow him to the bitter end, even after Sola gets Cannith to hand over the command seals. In the end, he is treated as a means to an end by all of the other characters within his sphere, and probably his own place within the structure of the Grail War. In all likelihood, he would have been surprised if Cannith had won, and he probably would have ordered Diarmuid to kill himself like what happened at the series' midpoint, but at the same time, he probably would have just gone along with it because he is a heroic spirit who blindly trudged forward no matter the obstacles or objectionable circumstances he found himself in. He is a far more reliable foil to Saber than what either Gilgamesh or Berserker are. He is a tragic figure trying to do the best for his people, and at the same time, he fails time and time and again, both in life and in death. Gilgamesh is a character, both in myth and in the show, that is defined by pride in all aspects. He sees everything as his own, and everyone to be his subjects. Obviously, he is the most powerful and beautiful of all the heroes, and is armored and arrayed in gold, silks, and other lavish objects. He was not expecting to have any real opposition in the beginning, and at the same time, he does not really get how others, who are supposedly his lessers, can even attempt to be on the same level or superior to him. In fact, he does not even understand that. At the end of the Holy Grail War, he will be sacrificed and discarded for his master in order to obtain his wish until Kyrie reveals the various circumstances to him. He also tries to force Arturia to become his wife or spouse or significant other, because he has an attraction to her and believes that simply by being King of Kings that she ultimately belongs to him without question, despite not realizing that she has her own autonomy and agency, which she exercises by resisting his efforts to the bitter end. Finally, with Saber, she ultimately desires to undo her own actions in life because all of her actions in life led to ruin and destruction, going so far as to wish that she never took the sword out of the stone to become King of Britain, no matter what the cost. She wants to have her cake and eat it too by thinking that somehow, someway, that she can be good and undo all of her actions due to her mistake of rejecting Mordred. Ultimately, she is blinded by this sense of shame, which does not allow her to see that there is something that is greater than her own failings in life. Despite destroying her own kingdom, that there is a greater good in it all, and that it was not all her fault. Having an advisor and a spouse who actively plotted against her and her circle of friends stabbed Arturia in the back for selfish gain. She believes in the ideals of chivalry and honor until it interferes with her own goals. Now, let's talk about the finale of the series. To set the stage, Kyrie has killed both Tosaka and his own father. Castor and Ryunosuke have been defeated. Kenneth and his affiliated have gotten iced by Kiritsugu. Waver and Ryder are taking their things easy, and Karya and Lancelot are in pursuit of their respective goals. Waver then reveals to the Japanese couple he has been staying with his true intentions. And they go like, yeah, we knew that all along and we just liked your company. Also, Ryder then goes out in a blaze of glory against Gilgamesh, and Waver's thread is complete for this story. Iris gets kidnapped and is made into the Grail conduit. Kiritsugu and Kyrie fight to the bitter end, and to the point where Kiritsugu actually kills Kyrie temporarily and unwittingly reaches the Grail. Inside the Grail, he is asked a hypothetical situation to choose what people get to live and which have to die for things to work out. Eventually, he realizes that for this wish of world peace means that hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people have to die in the end. That there is only a bloody path that would result in what supposedly would be called world peace. He realizes that the Grail grants wishes based upon the heart of the one who is doing said wishing, and is brought back to all his misdeeds. Horrified by this, he goes and rejects the Grail. In doing this, he also consciously rejects his own spouse in flesh and blood, forsaking the possibility of ever reuniting with Ilya in life. Instead, he orders Saber to destroy the Grail, and Kyrie is then resurrected, and then it grants his wish for essentially gaining the Nietzschean will to power and defying the natural order of the universe itself. After the confrontation with Lancelot, and believing that the Grail can still grant her wish, Arturia battles against Gilgamesh. He still does not get the fact that she will never belong to him, and ultimately refuses to accept the fact that their versions of reality are incorrect for a multiplicity of reasons. Gilgamesh never had absolute control over the people he thought were under his thumb due to being the most powerful person in the land, and forced it upon them. Arturia is blind to the fact that while she did fail at recognizing Mordred as her own flesh and blood, acting so detached and stoic around her people and being perceived as a tyrant was the reason for her failings, and that she was a true knight and had great intentions through and through the execution reason, not the actual heart behind it. As for Kiritsugu, he goes and orders Saber to destroy the Grail and explains why, but she still refuses, blinded by her own desire and shame to set back the clock. What results from this is Kiritsugu going and using the rest of his command seals and causes a huge explosion, which then simply destroys a good chunk of the town afterwards. He then goes and finds a child in the wreckage and rubble and raises him as his own. Kyrie and Gilgamesh gloat and go away to plot their evil schemes for a later date. Kyrie then begins to act as Rin's mentor, and we find out that the child was found in the rubble was Shiro. Karia is killed by Sakura. Ilya begins to be trained by the Eisenbergs, and such begins the thread of the rest of the Fate franchise. Yet, they all begin their own paths, totally unaware of the events that are so intimately connected together and will encounter each other in the future. The seed of Kyrie and Gilgamesh's own downfall are being plotted, and in due time, justice will be meted out, for it is eternal. Really, as stated before, this has all of the hallmarks of a Greek tragedy written all over it. From the beginnings of all our main players are blinded by pride in their pursuit for the good that they seek. They believe themselves to be absolutely righteous and free from reproach, only to have their plans be corrupted, or in such a way that the powers that be are all subverted in some fashion by an usurper. Malloy by Waver, the Eisenbergs by Karitsugu, Kyrie by Tokomi, Sakura to Karia, and the list goes on and on and on. Everyone drinks from the same wellspring of pride, which then manifests itself in all of them and allows for them to be usurped in the end. The one thing that separates Zero from ultimately being a nihilistic tragedy is the fact that this leads to a greater good. Before you go, don't forget to please like, comment, and subscribe. Anyways, this is Frontiers Horizon signing off, and until next time, stay frosty.